Welcome to TradeTheMBA.com. This is Jonas Reports for the 13th. Well, look at that candle. That was quite the interesting situation. Trump decided to make a comment about China, and everyone freaked out. The usual ridiculousness because they know better than to freak out, but yet they do anyway. And so this was just a knee-jerk reaction that cost a lot of people a lot of money. Um, Mostly because of their leverage, and this is their own fault. I've always been one who's against the idea of significant leverage, particularly in the crypto world. It's a nightmare, and people suffered accordingly, and the liquidations were fantastic and just out of control. So, yeah, harmful to a lot of people just from a simple comment. And of course, he corrected immediately, and you can see we're already back over the 76% pre-market. Um, as he steps down in Israel there to, bask in the whole hostage removal thing, but it did certainly clear out any of the uh, stops or anything that existed. I mean, it just wiped through everything and literally came to the 50% mark and restored itself from there. There was nothing in that required a fill of that. All the positive extremes had been filled prior to this, at least from an ES standpoint. Intraday was a little bit different, but um, that's what happens when you get the magenta under the yellow. So we were talking about from before. Um, Things had just reached this point right here where we were at like literally two on a short standpoint. So there really wasn't any strong short activity. And we just have regular softness. So there wasn't anything. That's why we suggested that maybe 76%. But when you get something like this is completely outside of any normalized construct because, basically said he was just going to flip the whole system upside down and going to war with China. It's like, what the heck? So that was quite dramatic. You can see already the Nasdaq also uh, well back above the right at the 76% at this particular stage. But it's going to take some back and forth, I think, to relive that carnage that took place, particularly in the crypto world. I don't think that's going to end up resolving as fast. So there was a lot of damage done to people who were on extreme margin, and you know you want those huge returns and you die by that same sword. So this is what volatility will do to you. And as much as I predicted we would have this increase in volatility, yeah, that was yeah, well in line with the kind of extreme volatility. Um, so definitely, when we look at it from a current standpoint, yeah, you're in a full DOC spread within this setup, and that it's going to take another day or so before we can really get a beat on how well. But definitely, we're going to be watching the 76% and seeing if it maintains itself or not. And if it does, then things will stabilize. Of course, everyone flowing into treasuries as a backstop because it certainly couldn't flow into crypto, but it did cause oil to break into new lows. So that was interesting. If it can stay below that peak, this could be the beginning of something that's a little bit more interesting from a growth standpoint down the road. So we'll be watching that. No idea why anyone jumped into the euro after that. I mean, I guess they thought this was solely going to be a U.S. situation, but any trade war with China would be a horrible impact on Europe as well. And that was people just didn't know what to do. That was really what it comes down to. They were just like scraping for anything, sell out whatever you can. Now gold, of course, yeah, did fine within that, barely even noticed it, and then took off from it. So that tells you where the situation is. Gold still being the premier uh, backstop for any kind of slide. And we've talked about this because the BTC, ETH, they trade along with the Nasdaq, and it's not a surprise that you're seeing exactly the same move. So as much as they're a haven, they're more like just a parking situation. And we always see that whenever they're selling and people have to cover stops or whatever, they go into their sell the crypto and use it to cover their margins. And we've seen it time and again. It was a pretty strong blow through, though, all the way down to the 23%. Of course, we had talked about these positive extremes going all the way back to here. Isn't that amazing how it filled those exactly? Yeah, perfect with that. So all the way back down to the 114 range, and um, that's quite a move. But not out of control relative to what we're seeing. It'll be an interesting one to see if we get a rejection here of magenta coming back above, or whether we get the white MBI crossover. And if the white MBI crossover, then you're definitely looking at a move to the 0%. So that will give us an idea how much pain has been inflicted in the crypto space. From an ETH standpoint, it's already regained quite a bit of it, unlike BTC. So kind of a divergence there. It's already back over the 50% range, and that's an interesting differential. So keep an eye out on that one. I thought this was interesting because when we look at it from the broader perspective, you got to go all the way back over here to find your last set of positive extremes that were back in September. And guess what? We filled those from a 50K standpoint. They were right here and had never touched them before, but now we have. And let's just zoom with that. Just shows you how far back you had. And you'll have to excuse this construction that's going on outside my windows. Very annoying. So intraday standpoint there was we ended up with MBI white spike. So well above, but magenta was still over. It wasn't until magenta crossed below right here, and you still held up for a couple more bars, and then everything just collapsed after that. But you could see immediately the gap open from futures, and that's where we're at this particular stage, just above 50%. But interestingly enough, all positive extremes as well, so might need to fill in some of that as well. We'll see how well people manage after that effect. And then for a 5-minute chart, it was just, pretty much all red after that first moment, and then the big gap up. So in European session, things are doing just fine. They filled back somewhat from earlier pop, so we're able to regain from there. But that's the long and the short of it. It was quite dramatic. We'll continue to follow it, but good lesson for not being in huge margin. Just plain and simple. As always, trade well. Talk again later.